Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I am Marc Givler, joined by Kevin Noon here as we continue our Southern swing, but we interrupt our Southern swing for some big news from the West Coast. The Buckeyes have landed one of the top receivers in the country, Kayden Dixon-Wyatt, out of Mater Dei in SoCal, teammate of Chris Henry Jr., and again, huge pickup here for Brian Hartline, who just seems to continue to almost choose who he wants at this point.
The curse of Mater Dei is over. The last time Ohio State had landed a player from there was Nicky Sualua, so we're talking back to my collegiate days, I guess, for that. And yeah, I mean, it really has been a case for years of Brian Hartline focusing in on a small group of players, and this year it's really just kind of been he's picked who he's wanted. And you know, there's recruiting and then there's selecting, and not a lot of assistant coaches go out there and select, but it certainly seems to be the case for Coach Hart.
Yeah, I mean, look, they really started to pick up the pace here with Kayden once Chris Henry Jr. went out there. Those two have built a very good relationship, both on and off the field in a short amount of time. So Chris Henry Jr. has to get at least a hockey assist here on this as well. So, kudos to him for his efforts. You mentioned the Mater Dei curse that I've kind of talked about a lot over the years. He hasn't signed yet, but 7 months to get him to sign, and then the curse can be officially broken. They've had so many close calls there. This is a huge program to break into. It's one of the top 3 or 4 high school football programs in America, and just the talent coming out of there has been ridiculous over the years, and even more so lately, the last 5 or 10. So this is huge for Ohio State. And again, they started picking things up, and then they got him back on campus in the spring, and things just went full sprint from there. It was a sprint to the finish for the Buckeyes, and Hartline just kind of zeroed in just on Kayden Dixon-Wyatt down the stretch here the last few weeks.
Mater Dei is one of those schools that I've followed for a lot longer than I've covered recruiting. I went to Irvine High. Mater Dei was just really down the street. Irvine High's record against Mater Dei, 0 billion. I don't think they've ever beaten them. Last time I checked, I don't think it's happening anytime soon. But yeah, KDW, as I'm going to just say, because we don't have JSN to kick around anymore, so we're going to talk about KDW, is a tremendous player. And just the way that Brian Hartline was able to really focus in on one guy. And that's what happens when you already have a Chris Henry Jr. in the class. I mean, not leaving out other names to disparage them, but that's just how special Chris Henry Jr. is. And now you have KDW kind of there in the same vein.
Yeah, big-time prospect, one of the very elite receivers in this class nationally, a guy who does a lot of his work out of the slot but can also play outside. He's got the size to play outside. He's got the speed to play outside, but he works a lot in that middle of the field, and he's a very precise route runner. He's a guy with a lot of length and can make a lot of contested catches, as you'll see on his tape that we're running. Just a guy who can go up in traffic over the middle of the field and make the plays, but also, again, a guy who can create separation with precision route running, and again, great ball skills. And also, again, a little underrated about him is he can beat you deep if you let him. And so this is a guy who brings a lot of different skills to the table. But I think my favorite thing is his fit in this class, because Chris Henry Jr. is a big physical outside receiver. Brock Boyd, who they just flipped from TCU, is more of a Devin Smith, kind of a vertical threat outside. He may be able to play in the slot a little bit, of course, but as they cross-train these guys, but he's kind of an outside vertical threat. Jaden Ricketts probably similar to that as well. And then you've got KDW there, who's kind of a master of the slot. And so this is just a great fit for what they've already built at the receiver position in this recruiting class.
And you couple this with last year, they didn't necessarily get the numbers that you would have expected in the class. They were very much involved with a lot of the top names. Things just didn't happen that year, but this year they were able to really identify the guys they wanted to go after, and they were able to land them. And that's that is the big thing. And you mentioned earlier, you got 7 months to try and hold on. USC, Oregon, they are not going to go away. They're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I know that I say often it's better to play, better to be the pursuer than the pursued, but take the darn commitment when you can get it, and they got it, so now you got to just hold on. And I think that Chris Henry Jr. being in his ear constantly is not going to hurt, and it's just when you watch his tape, and I know we already run it at this point, he's going against dudes. I mean, Mater Dei plays St. John Bosco. Mater Dei plays the top-end teams in Southern California CIF competition. It's the same thing I talk about with, the highest classifications in Texas, certainly, a lot of them in Florida, and even, with what we've done here on Southern Swing, even in North Carolina and in Georgia.
Yeah, and quite frankly, they play a national schedule too. So in addition to playing all the Southern California powers, they also have a couple of big games a year where they play an out-of-state powerhouse.
Whether it's like a Gorman or somebody or a South Florida
they've played
team.
in Florida. Yeah, they've played all over the country. So he's going to be very well tested, both from what he sees in practice every day with their talent, what he sees in Southern California and their national schedule. So they're going to get a guy who I think is pretty college ready. You look at some of like a Brock Boyd may need to put on a little weight. Jaden Ricketts, probably a competition adjustment to happen there coming out of Watkins Memorial. But you look at someone like KDW, and that's a guy who I think can play early. Maybe not to the extent that we just saw Jeremiah Smith. We'll never make that comparison on this show. I can promise you that. But definitely a guy who I think can help them early. And again, an interesting dynamic there as USC lands Elbert Hill on Friday out of Ohio. Now Ohio State strikes back. I don't want to call it the Empire Strikes Back because Ohio State's the good guys, right? But
it's all about perspective.
Right,
it's
exactly.
all about perspective.
But it's a very interesting couple of days here between those two programs, and now Ohio State's going to have to fend off USC the next 7 months, and USC's going to have to fend off Ohio State for the next 7 months for Hill. So interesting dynamic there. It's developed. I think a scary thing for programs around the country now is nothing's ever set in stone with recruiting, so we're going to leave a little bit of a gap open here, but it's very likely Ohio State's done with receivers in 26. Hartline would prefer to just take 3 every year. I think he's realized with the portal and everything else and with sending guys to the NFL 3 and done, that 3 a year is just not going to do it, and you're going to have to probably a lot of years take 4. But I don't think they wanted to really go over 4 in this class. Again, we'll see. Exceptions could be made. You never know what could happen in 7 months with attrition and everything else. But it feels like the rest of the country is going to be in a bad spot because it feels like Brian Hartline will now get to start selecting his 2027 targets.
Right. I mean, with the 105 number coming out of the settlement, there's always a chance. I mean, we always talk about this player or that player is just too good to say no to, but I don't expect to see Ohio State have an active approach. I think you keep some guys warm. I think you keep your hat, in the ring on some guys, but being able to turn his attention to 27 certainly is problematic for everybody when you have 80% of Brian Hartline focused on that year, and you're still trying to put your 26 together. That's a good place for Ohio State to be, especially with one of its strongest recruiters on a coaching roster that is the deepest, most talented roster in terms of recruiting that I've seen in Columbus.
Yeah, no question. There's no doubt right now that I think Ohio State's staff, top to bottom, on the recruiting trail is probably the best we've ever seen, certainly in terms of depth. But then again, you've got these guys at the top, your Brian Hartlines of the world, who are just excellent nationally. It also, first year's offensive coordinator is truly the offensive coordinator. This is going to help him. They're bringing in all these big offensive tackles, offensive linemen in June. They're still working on running backs, some very, very highly rated running backs. And look, Tyler Bowen and Carlos Lachlan are very, very capable, outstanding recruiters. But to have Brian Hartline have a little extra time on his hands to help you with that in June and here over the summer as you're looking to sign some big-time players at those positions on offense, that can't hurt either.
Right. I mean, he's able to – there are never enough hours in the day. Just how it works. You hear stories of coaches going – 20 hours a day, sleeping on the sofa in their office and having to get at it again. I'm not saying that Brian Hartline is going to get 8 hours of sleep every night, but he's going to be able to put stuff as Ohio State's OC more so than being the wide receiver coach and helping co-recruit some of these other names. And honestly, I think when you just look at some of these names, that gets you more cachet with some other recruits too that want to go and be part of a huge class. And then I mean huge in terms of talent, not huge in terms of numbers. So all of this bodes very well. And then you get into fall when you're going to have players visiting and everything else. You won't have as many hands to have to shake.
Yeah. So this is working out quite nicely, obviously, for Ohio State right now, and Brian Hartline continues to win. You want to put in that he can't keep getting away with this meme.
But he does.
Is what I'm sure is what the rest of the country is thinking right now. But he keeps getting away with this. He keeps pulling guys from all corners of the country. And like, I'm a huge KDW fan. I think it's a great pickup for Ohio State. Kevin, any parting thoughts here before we sign off and get back to our Southern swing?
Well, I think that you brought up the point about Albert Hill and USC, and I don't think Ohio State would agree to sign a non-aggression pact with USC because Ohio State still wants Albert Hill as well. So, it's just kind of crazy how all those things work out. And I think when you're a receiver recruit, you look at the success that Ohio State has had. You look at Emeka Egbuka going to Tampa Bay. I mean, you sit there and you know that coming out of this season, it's going to be Carnell Tate or somebody like that that's going to emerge. And then, by the way, then you have Jeremiah Smith. So, there may be teams that come in with better NIL packages in terms of immediate dollars, but I think if you're playing the long game, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's a generational run. 4 straight years with the first round pick was a record. Now, if someone like Carnell Tate can play their way into the first round next draft, you're guaranteed to have a 6-year run. So you would have doubled the previous record. In years, you go from 3 to 6. Again, spoiler alert: Jeremiah Smith, 3 and done, first round draft pick.
Really?
Yes. And then we turn to we got Mylan Graham coming up. So I mean, we'll see where that goes. But it's a generational run right now. And one thing you kind of mentioned was just kind of going after Hill still, but here's the other thing. We're talking about cornerback recruiting right now. How good is that going to be for Tim Walton to be like, hey, here's all the receivers that are coming in. You want to get better? You want to develop? Iron sharpens iron. Look at all the receivers you're going to be going against in practice. Look at this caliber of player you're going to be practicing against.
Well, as the divide gets bigger between the top teams and kind of everybody else, there's just a smaller number if you're an elite player. Now, you're still going to have instances where somebody's going to go to the hometown school because that's just what they want to do. But if you're looking at your craft and your main motivation is my development and everything else, Ohio State has certainly laid the claim for receivers to go against the secondary to go against the receivers. It's just a cycle that keeps feeding itself. And honestly, whenever a major program falls off the cliff, you have to really do a really good autopsy to see why it happened, because the machine keeps feeding itself. And in Ohio State, and I'm not saying that it just naturally happens. I mean, Ryan Day's had to make some tough decisions along the way. There's a lot of things that go into it, but Ohio State has this damn machine on automatic right now.
Yeah, it's a snowball effect at this point. They're definitely rolling. Coming off the national championship is only going to help them in 26 and 27, especially. Again, I always say look at the class after the next class, which would be 27 for you get that really national championship bump. They're off to a great start in 27 already. So it's exciting times, and it's exciting times at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Jeremy Birmingham on board now. We're trying to create the best staff we can for you guys.
Have this thing on automatic too.
Yeah, that's what we're trying. We're not gonna put ourselves in the Brian Hartline recruiting category yet, but that was a huge pickup for us. Obviously, you can check his stuff out on BuckeyeHuddle.com. He's already hanging out on the message board. He's already turned in some content. He's had some really cool insights, and he's going to have a story about this commitment as well on BuckeyeHuddle.com. So get on over there. It's just $12.99 for your first month, and again, just give us a shot. It's less than, you can't get a large pizza for that anymore. In most places, so just give us a shot. We think you'll be satisfied. We think you'll be happy. And if you have any questions or concerns about it, reach out to me in advance. You can find me obviously on Twitter at Marc Givler, and also you can reach me. My emails on the website, everything else. So always happy to answer questions from people who are interested in subscribing. So appreciate everyone's support as always. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will talk to you again very soon.